Hey, shalom, shalom, mishpacha. Welcome to another edition of Ray Bash's Ramblings. I'm your host, Rabbi Yehuda ben Shomer, and today I hope to clear up a little confusion regarding altars in the Tanakh. If people have watched many of my videos and read many of my articles, you'll know that I've said many times in the past that one of the reasons, just one of the reasons we don't sacrifice animals today is because when Solomon built the temple, Solomon made a covenant with God, and God agreed with him that that would be the only legitimate place that people could offer sacrifices, and that would be the place where he puts his name. And so that's just one of the reasons why we don't sacrifice today, because there is no standing temple in Jerusalem, and there's no working Levitical priesthood, so we can't offer sacrifices as prescribed in the Torah. Now, the confusion arises is when you read the book of Kings and Chronicles, it talks about other altars and how even the prophets were offering sacrifices on certain altars. And if the Temple Mount was the only place that people could offer sacrifices, what's up with that? You know, wouldn't the prophets be sinning? Well, this is what occurred. If you look at the litany of various kings of Judah and various kings of Israel, first off, you'll know that the temple was with the tribe of Judah, the house of Judah in that kingdom, and so the kingdom of Israel created their own shrine and their own altar and everything, which was illegitimate. But in both cases, you had good kings and you had bad kings. When you had good kings, there was a revival of Torah. When you had bad kings, the people followed the lead of the king and the leaders, and the whole nation was evil. And so a lot of these prophets and a lot of the righteous remnant during these reigns of the evil kings refused to offer sacrifices at the temple because they considered the covenant that God had made with Solomon, that it was revoked. It had become null and void during that period of time. Why? Because God keeps his end of the bargain, but man doesn't always keep his end of the bargain. And the covenant that Solomon made with God, the evil kings were breaking and were not keeping up with that. So as you had evil kings, you had evil priesthoods. And if someone was to offer a sacrifice on the altar at the temple in Jerusalem during one of the reigns of the evil kings and evil priests, that sacrifice, they felt, would not be recognized by God because on the human side, they dropped the ball regarding these covenant that Solomon made with God regarding the temple and regarding the altar. So in protest against their rebellion and in protest against the evil of the king and the priests, they had to go back to the old school way of doing things and erect altars made from stone, unhewn, untouched stone, as their forefathers did, as the patriarchs did, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And the prophets would erect these and would do sacrifices as they did before the tabernacle was made, before the Levitical priesthood was put into place, and even way before the temple was built and the altar was built. So this is why you read that they were still sacrificing on altars. Also, when you read those passages, you must remember that a lot of these altars were built during the time of the patriarchs. And so when the king and the priests of the kingdom of Judah gone bad or gone evil, they would go back to these old altars that had been built even way before the tabernacle was built, because they were considered sacred, holy sites that was built by the patriarchs themselves, and they would offer sacrifices on these old, ancient, holy, sacred altars, because there was that covenant connection with Abraham and with the rest of the patriarchs. And this was until the reigns of the evil kings would be over. Then they would go back to sacrificing in a legitimate way, because the covenant would have been reinstated when a good king came back and said, hey, we're going to keep this Torah. We've slacked off. We failed. We're going to keep Torah again. As you see happened with Josiah, the 8-year-old king, and 8 stands for new beginnings, and he created a revival in Israel because the scroll was found and they realized all the good things that they were supposed to be doing and they weren't. And it was a revival of Torah. And so the temple was repaired and the altar was repaired, and there was a revival. Sacrifices were offered there again at the Temple Mount where it should be. And so when the good kings came into their rule and reign, and sat upon the throne. The Solomonic covenant, if you will, was reinstated with these good kings, and so it was legitimate once again to go to the altar in Jerusalem. And so the old school way of doing things was left behind until another evil king took the place. So hopefully this clears up a little confusion. I know this is not an exhaustive explanation or commentary on this whole issue, but I hope it does shed a little bit of light regarding this. Now, just to kind of supplement just slightly, there's also been the question, what about those who lived outside of Jerusalem, who lived in the diaspora, even when the temple was standing, that people would have to bring sacrifices because of sin, and especially because, for instance, for women on a monthly basis because of the laws of Nidah. There is not a whole lot of information out there regarding this, but the best we can ascertain and the best we can understand through research and historical documents and such, and things such as the Talmud, is that many of the women and people in the diaspora did not sacrifice because they couldn't afford a monthly trip to Jerusalem to be able to sacrifice. It was just too much money and it was just too far. So the only times that they would sacrifice would be during the pilgrimage festivals, which they would spend all year saving up for, and they would be able to attend the pilgrimage festivals and would be able to sacrifice then, and some of them would even make up some sacrifices from that time. But there is a passage in Hosea that talks about how our prayers compensate for the animal sacrifices, and that principle is very much applicable today because there is no standing temple. And so we, living in the diaspora, in the here and now, even though there is no temple, a lot of times in the prayer siddur we will pray that passage from Hosea that says, even though the temple is not standing and the Levites are not in their assigned places doing their assigned duties, we pray that this recitation of these scriptures that talk about the sacrificial system and the daily sacrifices that need to be offered, that as Hosea said, that our prayers and our recitations would be as if we had literally performed these sacrifices, that our prayers, our supplicatory prayers, would compensate for these sacrifices until there is a time that we are able to offer these sacrifices again. So in regards to the laws of Nidah and the women living in the diaspora, they would take the prescribed mikvah according to the Torah, because it's easy to go to a living body of water, but it wasn't always economically feasible or achievable for a woman to go to Jerusalem on a monthly basis to make a trip there for a simple sacrifice because of Nidah. So they would pray, and the prayers would compensate for that until there was a time to where either they made Aliyah and returned to Israel to where they could do this on a regular basis, or they would wait till the pilgrimage festivals and offer some sacrifices there. So there's a lot of questions, a lot of gray areas, a lot of mysteries, and still things that remain unknown because the information is so scant regarding this subject. But I wanted to at least pass along to you what I do know and what I have found out. So hopefully this answers some questions and enlightens you a little bit. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks again for watching. Shalom and Shavuot Tov. Bye-bye.